Alright, first we're going to get this Unity Pong tutorial project, which we were given permission to use by Adam Graham here. Thank you very much, Adam. So to do that, I'm going to clone this the way I normally do. And we'll go over here. Let's see, so we'll make a new one. Set this up for it. And we'll just clone the project here. Cool. Oops. So now we have this here. And I will go to Unity and open this up. Now that we have this open, I'm going to import the Elements CodeGen package. Now I have it generated here, but hopefully you guys will have it accessible on the Unity Asset Store to either import directly or to download and import the way I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to go import new package. Alright, and I'll install this. Now it does have some other dependencies, namely just Newtonsoft JSON. There we go. All right, now you can see the package has been imported here. So now, if you go to Window, you should be able to see the Elements CodeGen option. Select that. That'll pop this guy up for you. So now, with Elements running in the background, we can generate our Elements client code. This is based on the Open API project, the Unity project specifically, using the OAS3 spec. For now, I'm going to leave everything default, but just so you can see what this means. So the package name indicates what namespace it'll be put into. So you could put this under your own project namespace if you want to, or you could leave it under Elements. If you want to version it, which directory it gets put into, the URL that you're running Elements at, so the root, and then your application name. The application name isn't relevant quite yet because we haven't created any custom server code. Once you create a custom server code, it will also generate client code for you based on the endpoints you've defined. So for now, I'm just going to put in the default, since we haven't changed our user. Click Generate Code. And I'll just take a second, download, and import the code automatically for you. So you can see under Generated. You can ignore these. This is sort of a part of what OpenAPI generates for you. It's completely optional to leave these in here or not. But what's most important is the actual code here. So let's open this up. So the big thing you get out of this is this default API. This is a huge file because it has all of the APIs Elements provides. You can see here's nearly 40,000 lines. You don't need to really know this much at all, just as long as you know what the APIs are, either via the manual or the source or whatever, or if you just know what you're looking for. But this is where the magic happens. Now, to make it a little easier for you, we've created this Elements client here, and it just does a little basic object reference management, session management stuff for you. So it'll automatically save the session, add it to the header, allow you to log out, clear the session, specify the root URL for, depending on where you have elements deployed, so on and so forth. You also have this partial class for the API client here if you want to do any sort of overrides for your requests or responses. You can see here we have a default override for the response to see if you get back a session creation object, which indicates that you've most likely, probably guaranteed, just logged in. And then it'll actually set that session creation for you and log you in. So now let's start by creating a main menu scene. And let's add that here. Now, to speed things up, I'm just going to copy this in. I did use Text Mesh Pro for this. There we go. Okay. Okay. So I've created here just a basic, very basic UI for this. I've created the different permutations of what you might need to get a sign in screen going. So we have our new session buttons here. We have our login area here. We have our create account with a little error text just in case something goes wrong. And then if you already have an existing session, you can log back in or continue from where you left off. Now we need a view controller to handle this. So I'll go into scripts here. Create a new guy, and we'll just call it main menu view controller. Okay. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and copy from the completed project because this stuff isn't super relevant to the element side and it's a little tedious. Now normally I'd split up the UI code and the data source and all that stuff into partial classes or something else, but just to make it easier to view and keep it all in front of you, I'm just going to put it all in one class here. Okay, and then grab all of our button events. I'll get to these in a sec. All right. So when we start up, it's probably a good idea to initialize the Elements client. So if it's not already initialized, and we'll want to set this with the root. For now, we're just using the local instance. Oops, there we go. Now you probably want to have some sort of environment variables or something else to indicate which environment you're pointing it at, but for this example, we'll just hard code the local instance. Then we have this code here. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm checking to see if we've initialized this before, since it's possible to return to the screen and we only want to initialize this once. The reference to the API is kept in static space, so it's going to persist from scene to scene. Then we check to see if there's already a session active. If there is, and there's no profile, then we try to get the profile, and I'll get to this logic in a little bit. Then we do some basic just UI setup here. Now to manage the UI, I've set up all the objects using these toggles. Yeah, and this toggle group here, so that when one is turned on, it'll make sure the others are turned off. Okay. So now let's add in some of these other methods we have. Okay, so there are 3 methods that we want to implement here related to sign in and sign up. So the first one will be, let's do the login, so the sign in. Okay. Now to do a login, we are going to have to create a request object. So we can reference the API here, and now we have access to all the API methods. So let's do create username password session, async. We want to be able to await. And then we'll pass in a new username password session request. Oops. I'm just doing this inline. Don't need that. So our user ID will be the username here. Password will be the password. And the profile ID will be the profile ID. All right, that's how you log in. So once we get our session creation object back, or assuming we do, so we'll do a null check if something went wrong for whatever reason. All right, so if it came back successfully, then we'll just load the next scene. All right, now let's do the sign up code. Mostly the same parameters, except this time we'll use a display name because we were creating a new profile instead of attempting to select an existing one. Reference the API, and then sign up user async. So name, should match the application name that we added in the Elements web UI in the admin panel. And this will be our display name. Okay. Okay, and that's signing up a new user. Now it's possible to create more than one profile. We leave it pretty flexible. You can make as many profiles as you want for a specific user. Basically, when you sign in, you have the different sign-in methods here. You can actually, so when you create a user, it's kind of like, say, your Blizzard login or your Steam login or your Epic login. It's the overarching account. Now there can be many applications in the system, and your profile is associated with both your user and the application. So if you have a game, say an MMO, and you want to be able to create a different character, say you have your warrior, actually here I have this here, your warrior, your wizard, or your bard, those can all exist as separate profiles associated with that user, associated with that game. That's basically how this is broken down. In this case, we'll just create the singular profile because we don't need more than one for this game. So if that came back successfully, then we will log in with this information. Oops. There we go. And we want to get the ID out of the user create response here. So now, just in case you want to separate your flow a little bit, you can actually let them sign in and then let them select their profile and then fetch it. So what we can do here is actually fetch all the profiles. So we're going to get all the profiles. Sync. Pong. Normally I'd have a constant or something like that indicating the application name, but just hard coding for the tutorial here. So do the user name or ID here. Okay, and that'll give us all of our profiles. So if we have profiles, and we can kind of assume that there's only one. And we can assign the profile after the fact, and that'll be added on to our session storage and memory. Cool. Then, similarly, if for whatever reason creating a session doesn't come back with the profile, say yeah, we didn't sign in with the profile ID and we just signed in with the username and password, then we can fetch it here. With the user ID. Cool, there we go. So this is it. Restore these, restore these. All right, and we're good to go. So now I will just create a controller object and assign all these to it. And then once we do that, we can take it for a spin. All right, now let's take it for a spin. There we go. Let's create a new account. So, all right, we'll say elements, Pong person, why not? We'll say Pong1, something simple for the password, and create account. Cool. Now, you don't see much, but we definitely signed in. So now, let's actually make use of that somehow. We'll go to the Pong scene here. And let's duplicate this, call it player name. And just for symmetry, for now, we'll do opponent name. Let's put that on the other side there. Just gonna eyeball it. Oops. Let's bring it back. We'll just call this CPU for now. Okay, we'll go into the game manager here. He formats it a little differently than I do, that's okay. And we'll add those in there. And then we will check here. So if make sure we're using that. So if we have an active session, it's good to check for, mainly in case we want to test, by loading the scene directly, we bypass the login system. This way nothing gets messed up. So player name.text is, oops. Assign it to our profile's display name stored in our session. All right, and that should be all we need to do here. So now, let's just make sure we have these assigned. And I know we didn't make use of the opponent name, but we will once we get to the multiplayer section. So may as well set it up now. All right, let's run this from the top. Okay, so we have the session stored already. So it logged me back in, and there we go. So I'll just hit continue. And there, it says my name, although it's a bit long. I'll probably need to configure the, the auto sizing, but you get the idea. So yeah, this is how simple it is to just set up a new account in Elements. Hope you enjoyed, and look forward to the next one.